Hello and welcome to the Global Glamping Podcast series. My name's Adam Bell and I'm your host, and I'm here with Simon Fabian, who is the CEO and founder of Global Glamping. Welcome, Simon.
Hey, Adam. Nice to meet you.
You too. Fantastic. So, Global Glamping. Could you start by maybe sharing your story? How did it all start? What led to this initiative?
Oh, wow. Well, the short story is basically that I was fortunate enough to be able to financially retire back in 2018, and my partner and I decided we'd go and live on an island up here on the Gold Coast and forget about the world. After 2 months, I found that sandflies and the Gilligan's Island life wasn't for me, and because I could stop working, I could see what was actually happening in society.
Sure.
And I think what people do, generally speaking, is go to work, head down, bum up, work, go home, feed their family, kids, pay the bills week in, week out.
Yep, the normal routine.
Yep, and have very little time to realise what's really going on in the world. So for me, it was a massive eye-opener because domestic violence is rising. I was coming across women and kids sleeping in cars, in car parks, and being moved on by council. Met some homeless people, and their particular story was they were telling me they didn't want a house, they just needed somewhere to wash their clothes and food. And I'm thinking, well, what's the big issue? Like, if you don't want housing, why are we investing all this money in trying to find housing?
Sure.
Look, at the end of the day, that's just one small little group of people, and in general, everybody wants a house over their head, a roof over their head, and somewhere secure to sleep.
For sure.
So that and doing some personal development work, it dawned on me that, my life's purpose now is to give back to the world and be creative, because I've been gifted with this wonderful creative mind.
Awesome.
On how I can actually help society solve problems rather than be just a bobbing cork in an ocean of, we should do something and really not
Actually
do much.
getting out there and doing it.
Yeah. So that's where it all started. And the idea was, well, where do we get the money from? My personal view is that it would be better for charities to not have to put their hand out for donations all the time. People generally are doing it tough. So finding those extra dollars just to give to a charity, and there's heaps and heaps of charities out there, is a bigger challenge. And then you hear stories about charities spending 90% of their revenue on office space, executive salaries, transport costs, compliance, and the governance. While I can understand why they spend that money where they do, it still doesn't solve, in the main, the problem.
Sure.
So that's where it all started from. My dad passed away 2020, and he was one of the most, I'm his son, but he was the most inspiring person I've ever come across. He sacrificed his time with my family to help kids that are either homeless, abused, been removed by the state from their parents and stuff like that. And it was a live-in position. My mum had an equal position, but he chose to work her shifts and his shifts so she could be free for the kids.
Wow.
At the time, as a teenager, I'm like, my dad doesn't care about me. Boo-hoo. But now when I look back, and as a father myself, that sacrifice was just huge.
Amazing.
So post his death, it's just like the way I connect with him now that he's gone is to be the best person I can be each day and try and improve each day. And I do that by improving the lives of others. So that's the underlying passion behind Global Glamping.
That's fantastic, Simon. Fantastic. So you look at 3 areas of homelessness, and today we're looking specifically at domestic violence victims. Mm-hmm. How did you sort of come across deciding on the 3 areas of homelessness that you look after? And can you tell me a bit about the domestic violence program? Sure.
Okay, so essentially when you look out into the community, there are lots of services there for lack of a better term, your stereotypical homeless person, living on the street, train stations, wherever. So how can we add value there? Well, we probably couldn't, because they're already looked after. And then the floods hit and stuff started happening. And because I'm able to sit back and view the world, I said, okay, well, what's happening in this space? We're using northern New South Wales floods as an example, 2 years ago. And if you could take a drive through Woodburn today, there are still houses that are half demolished and people living in terrible circumstances. And the first farmer I met sadly has cancer. The whole business was wiped out by mud from the floods, to the point that they were living in their chicken coop and they had nowhere to live. And that was 6 months later. They're still in that situation with no help.
Wow.
I spoke to our local member about those kinds of cases, and the response I got back was, yeah, well, Woodburn's a smaller area. There's more people in Lismore, so we have to focus there. And it's like, I know the politicians do what they do, and and they've got a job to do, and they've got to look after everybody. But to ignore a group of people just because there's not that many of them when they're in desperate need living in a chicken coop is, in my mind, ridiculous. And we need to find a way as a society to fix that without being a burden on society, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So that planted the seed about the relocatable homes. In terms of domestic violence, around about the same time, I was just taking a walk one evening with the dog, and there's this lady and 2 kids in a car, and didn't pay much attention to it. It's like a bit weird, but next afternoon, they're still there. The third day, I went over and she's petrified. She's in so much trauma that me just being a male in her presence ended up being a trigger for more trauma.
Oh, wow.
So that opened my eyes to the domestic violence component. And then having 2 20-odd-year-old daughters, I'm thinking, just a circumstance in their life, and that could easily be them.
Yeah.
So what can we do about this? So that planted the seed for the domestic violence program.
Sure. Okay. Geez, that what a story. So I believe you've got an incident recording program for in the domestic violence space. Can you explain a little bit about that and how it's assisting victims?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it is, it's you might be familiar with the little press button devices that people that are prone to falls have and stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, we got hold of a device from WA that will actually press the button and it'll dial in, and our system will record the audio event of that situation.
Yep.
Because one of the problems we've had reported from domestic violence victims is that, let's say there's an incident, they press charges, they make up with their partner.
You hear about this a lot.
Yeah. The police go, we've got no evidence. They don't turn up for court, stuff like that. Completely understandable, but really frustrating at the same time, right?
Yeah, I can imagine.
So by having this device, on request, we can release the audio of the event. So it may assist police with the court proceedings, and also gives mainly women, but men are victims of domestic violence as well, I must say, the opportunity to have a point of contact then and there.
So they've got a device, they hit a button and that starts to an audio recording.
Yep. And Optus supplied the SIM cards, so there's no cost for the SIMs.
Does it send an alert anywhere as well, or is it purely just recording the
It can send the alert, but what we're focusing on is collecting the evidence. Because even if they sent an alert, time's still an issue. And this whole program may evolve. I mean, it's only 6 months old. So.
Sure.
So yeah, it does that, and every device has its own SIM card, which is its own mobile number. So that's recorded in the system, so we know exactly who has that device.
Okay. How many have you gotten out there? How many?
Only 11.
Only 11?
Yeah. Okay. They cost us $660 each. So
Yep.
For the devices.
Well, look, it's 11 people that have that didn't before, and I'm sure there's going to be many more. So,
and look, every state has different laws too. So
I imagine it's a minefield. I mean, on that, how do you ensure that the safety and privacy of victims you assist, especially when they are using, something like the incident recording program? So
they are the only ones that are allowed to access the audio, except for police, because they can actually mandate that we have to. But in the sign up, they actually consent that we can release it to police. Otherwise, no one has access to it at all.
Right. Okay. Now, look, many people might not understand the intricacies of finding safe accommodation for survivors of domestic violence. Can you tell us how Global Glamping goes about this?
Okay. It is a massive challenge, even for us as a provider of support. There's a few things. Number one, and it's not a sexist thing at all, it's the truth.
Yep.
As a male, people are suspicious in that environment straight away.
Sure.
So women's refuges, for example, are really reluctant to talk to me or talk to people in general.
Yep.
They don't like to release the physical addresses because then perpetrators can find the victims, which leads to another problem. And this is just evidence that I've collected by having a chat to a few different people as they've recovered from the violence, is that they can't go to family or friends because they're too easy to be found.
Sure.
If they can't get into women's refuge and there's not an unlimited supply of spaces, there's nowhere for them to really go, that they can't be found and be further at risk. So therefore, they're safer accepting the violent situation and having a roof over their head than actually dealing with it. And look, in the media, there's tragedies all the time of people being murdered by partners, and police are aware that there's a problem, but
you hear this all the time.
Yeah, it's all the time. And it's heartbreaking.
It is.
And as a small organisation, we can't do everything. I wish we could.
Yep.
And maybe through this series, we can find a way to do more as a community, because this has got nothing to do with profit. It's all about people.
Helping.
And trying to... We're never going to solve... Humans are humans, right? And we're all born differently. And some will do the right thing and care, and some just don't, and that's just the way it is.
Sure.
But if we can find enough people that do care and do want to contribute, then surely we can do a lot more.
Start to make a difference for more people.
And at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Perfect. Awesome. So tell me about the unique approach you have to offering accommodation vouchers and how they can also serve as a fundraising tool for organisations.
Yeah. Okay. So that's moving into our economic homelessness package, but essentially through a company called Marketing Boost.
Right.
They supply 3-night and 4-night vouchers to different locations around Australia and around the world, actually.
Yep.
And the only cost to the user of the holiday is the room taxes. So you might get $1,000 worth of accommodation for $150.
Right.
So for domestic violence victims, the idea was we could provide these vouchers if they're financially affluent, if you like, able to do that.
Yep.
So they can get well away from the situation as an immediate icebreaker, circuit breaker.
Sure.
That's where it started.
Yep.
It's since grown. We've now got 21-day and 7-day accommodation vouchers all over the world, with no additional taxes to be paid.
Fantastic.
So essentially, that's the concept, is to just give people the opportunity, not so much for the holiday, but just to get out of a really bad situation.
Sure.
For businesses, they can also give the holidays away as promotions for their business.
Yep.
So they're helping us as well. And every holiday that's claimed, the charity picks up $3. So we're giving something back to Joe Average that isn't in these challenging situations, and creating revenue so we can do more.
Fantastic. What a great concept. So if there's any business owners out there listening to this, they should get in touch and ask about that accommodation voucher program.
Oh, the more the better. And there's more
it's
to
a
that.
win-win-win for everyone.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And you've got a food support program as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Okay. Well, it's just located in Coffs Harbour in the main at the moment. Food Bank are our main supplier of food, but there's also a farmer at Kempsey, and he will provide us fresh meat in bulk at a flat rate, which is incredibly cheap. So what we do is we sell the prime cuts into the normal retail market.
Yep.
But then the sausages and mince is then donated to different agencies for food, or just individuals as well.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people out there that,
Heaps.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, the relocatable housing program.
Yep.
You're working on identifying suitable properties. Can Can you explain how this process sort of works and why it's so important for those trying to escape domestic violence?
Okay. Well, so domestic violence is part A. Part B is just your natural disaster victims. I'll talk about both.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Essentially, what's happened in that Woodburn from the Lismore floods is that there's some properties we were completely washed away on the edge of the river.
Yep.
Some of those insurance companies have refused to pay. They may be underinsured. I'm not saying it's the insurance company's fault, but it's just
for whatever
reality.
reason. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There has been talk of government buybacks of land and people can be relocated. But there were reports in the media last week that they said there was 200 allocated, but only 11 have taken it up in the last 2 years.
Really?
Right? So why I'm excited about this particular project is the house comes in on a trailer on wheels.
Yep.
It unfolds up to a 4-bedroom house.
Wow.
Right? Now, if you put some trellis and stuff around the floor level to hide the trailer, you wouldn't know it wasn't a real house. Right? And if you can pick that up for under 150 grand,
yeah,
it's pretty good, given you got no insurance and no way of getting a new house.
Yeah.
It's registerable as a caravan.
Okay.
So the movability of it is not a problem come council issues. And also, if there's another flood on its way, it can be packed up.
You can pack up the house and
within 8 hours, you could be moved the whole house to higher ground. So it gives people an element of security and hope where they were left with nothing.
Absolutely.
Where
did you find these?
Oh, the idea came from a company up here on the Gold Coast, but unfortunately that relationship didn't pan out. And we were about to give up on the concept, and then the government contacted me and said, what do you got to solve this problem? Which started the whole ball rolling again. And we're currently partnering with a company called Van Homes in New South Wales, and they can supply the houses. And there's a finance company that will actually help support that whole process. So it opens up investment opportunities for people that want to invest and also have a social conscience. And those that can't afford to get their own new home, there's a means of getting the finance without having to go through mortgage finance, which is pretty hard to get these days, because it comes under motor vehicle finance.
Yep.
So it just all works well. I'd love to say it was all my thing. It's just the universe all come together to provide.
What a fantastic program! Excellent. You say what other organisations are you collaborating with? Across all of your programs to help survivors.
Oh, look, there's plenty. Top of my head, Pete's Place in Coffs Harbour.
Yep.
Which is run by St Vincent de Paul, I think. Agape up here on the Gold Coast.
Yep.
And a couple of others. So they've been mainly recipients of food.
Sure.
And clothing. And Good 360 are a company. I don't know that if anybody really knows about them, because I didn't until about 12 months ago.
Yep.
But they actually facilitate the goodwill of corporate Australia with clothes and hygiene products, and the SIM cards from Optus for these devices have come all through Good 360. So they're a great organisation.
Fantastic. Now you're a pretty young charity in the scheme of things, and obviously got a lot of fantastic programs up and running. What have been some of your biggest challenges so far, Simon?
Oh well, there's been plenty. Finding the right people to work with, because I have a certain mindset about we can do things together and all succeed. There are people out there that don't think that way, and they're more concerned about what's in it for them. Ultimately, up front, the relationship seems fine, but over time you realise what's really going on. And then to pull the organisation away from those relationships 12 months in is the biggest challenge.
Sure.
Because I'd rather focus on getting results for the client group than the politics and the human stuff. And it's really weird. We're in this human services area trying to support people, yet avoid some people because they're not going to be aligned with our mission.
I can imagine.
And then trying to stay positive in that mess.
I think that's something we need to understand from people who are outside of charities, just how frustrating it must be for people in there with like you said, the politics, the red tape, the costs involved with delivering the services and the aid that you want to. That I can just imagine how frustrating that.
And that's really where I'm proud of what our little team has done, because we went in with the approach, we're not going to go and actively look for donations. We want to contribute to the world and earn our way. And by doing that, particularly for the homeless, we can show that you're better off getting up and doing something to improve your life than sitting there just waiting for a handout.
Sure.
And that's no disrespect to people that need the handout. But there are some that will just sit there all day with their hand out and cry poor.
Yep.
I don't believe we were born just to sit around and cry poor. Right? We can achieve great things, particularly if we do it together. Yep. But we've got to make an effort.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. So tell me, give me a success story. Tell me about a domestic violence victim who Global Glamping has helped.
All right. So this is a classic. So we've been in existence for 3 years. 3 months ago, I had a stroke, and I'm laying in hospital counting tiles. It was a pretty yuck situation.
I can imagine.
But in the middle of all that, we were able to deliver our first house, not only to a flood victim, but also a domestic violence victim.
Fantastic.
And look, it's awesome. It took 3 years and a stroke, right, to get this house. But at the end of the day, we've changed not only the lady's life, because she sent me a text saying, "Oh, thank you so much. I would never have believed this was possible. I was never going to be able to own my own home." And then the whole story that I knew behind it. But her 3 kids. The personal joy I get out of that is not about the ego.
Yep.
What I get out of that is hopefully one day when I'm dead and buried, because we're all here for a very short period of time, we're dead for a long time.
Yep,
right?
Very true.
Is if you believe the heaven and hell thing, I'm hoping to be sitting in heaven in the clouds and going, "Oh, look at that person, 150 years' time. I helped their great-grandmother back in 2020 get a home. Had I not helped her do that, that person may not have done something so significant in the world." So I can take, I don't know, I guess you call it a spiritual thing. And it's not that I'm religious, but I just have a belief that we have more to offer for eternity than the short time we're on the planet.
We're here for a purpose.
Absolutely. And I didn't have a purpose for 40 years. Right?
Yep.
And some life events changed me. So now I figure, given I got through the stroke, I've got 30 maybe years left.
Yep.
I'm going to make a count.
Difference.
So, yeah.
Look, I can see your emotion. I can see you're passionate. It's
you made me cry.
No, look, that's a fabulous story, and you're doing fantastic work. Look, that's about us up for time for this first episode, but I'm really looking forward about for doing this series with you over the next 12 months or so, and finding out far more in depth about what Global Glamping's doing, the people you're helping, and the programs you're rolling out. But look, for those listening who have maybe been moved by what they've heard today, and do have that social conscience and want to help, how can they support your cause?
Oh, look, there's lots of ways, and probably the first step would be just give us a call or shoot us off an email. So yeah,
sure. What's the website?
It's globalglamping.org.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, look, thanks for coming in today, Simon. Really enjoyed hearing what you've told us about, especially the domestic violence, homelessness side, and what you're doing there. And look forward to chatting with you again, maybe about natural disaster homelessness next time.
Cool. Thanks, Alan.